My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
The new Boost Mobile network is offering unlimited talk, text, and data for just $25 a month for life.
That sounds like a threat.
Then how do you think we should say it?
Unlimited talk, text, and data for just $25 a month for the rest of your life?
I don't know.
Until your ultimate demise.
What if we just say forever?
Okay.
$25 a month, forever.
Get unlimited talk, text, and data for just $25 a month with Boost Mobile forever.
After 30 gigabytes, customers may experience slower speeds. Customers will pay $25 a month as long as they remain active on the Boost Unlimited plan.
Millions of people have lost weight with personalized plans from Noom. Like Evan, who can't stand salads and still lost 50 pounds.
Salads generally for most people are the easy button, right? For me, that wasn't an option. I never really was a salad guy. That's just not who I am. But Noom worked for me.
Get your personalized plan today at Noom.com. Real Noom user compensated to provide their story. In 4 weeks, the typical Noom user can expect to lose 1 to 2 pounds per week. Individual results may vary.
Pursuing your future doesn't end at 40. In fact, it may mark the beginning of knowing who you are, what you're capable of, and what you really want. But knowing what's next and how to get there can be a challenge, especially when old narratives play on repeat. Liberty Road is here to share stories so that you can consider your possibilities, pursue your purpose, and move into your future with intention. I'm your host, Netta Jones, and we're here to listen, learn, and liberate dreams, one episode at a time. Well, hello, Liberty listeners. Welcome to another episode of Liberty Road. Today, you guys get to hear from Sally Lou Loveman. And as soon as I met her, I was like, this is what everybody is talking about when they say, oh my gosh, you're going to love Sally Lou. Sally Lou, welcome to the show.
Sally Lou, thanks for the Lou. That's my whole thing. Netta.
Yeah, I know, right?
We're the two
between the two of us.
Right. We're the hard names, which makes us just sort of like, you have to think a little and then it works.
So Sally Lou, tell us about Love Speaks. Tell us about what you do.
Well, you know how you start something and then it morphs into other things and we grow, yes. You know how we do that?
Yes.
And so at the core of Love Speaks is really about recognizing your talents and get paid for doing what you love. It's such a privilege to get paid to do what you love, you know, so I know that. And I know that most people can't go out there and do what they love because sometimes it doesn't pay the bills.
Yeah.
And I get that. So that's sort of how it started because my own story is literally about figuring out what it was that I wanted to do with my career, my life. And it happened at a young age for me. And every day of my life working in television for 38 years, I worked my ass off, but I was always so happy to be there because it filled me up. It filled me with joy. And if we could all live that life, that would be so wonderful. Yes, of course, there's stress with jobs, but you know, so it sort of started that way as me kind of telling my story of finding my passion and helping to inspire. Originally, it was to inspire students studying television and how to find their passion and their place in this world of entertainment. And then it has morphed. I started emceeing events because, you know, as the Oprah Winfrey Show audience producer, my team and I were producing audiences. However, I was also asked to be the warm-up person. So I was always in front of an audience. And I'll never forget the first time I emceed. It was the restaurant show here in Chicago. And I did the main stage of the celebrity chefs. So I would introduce them because I know how shows go. I know the rhythm. I know the production. I know how to fill in the space. I know how to shorten the space. I know how to take cues. So I'm up there introducing them, and then I'm working the audience to get questions for them. And then I would ask my own questions because I do my research. And the chefs would be like, who is this person? Because I wasn't asking like, did you use kosher salt or sea salt? Like I was like, so tell me about your grandmother, you know? And I always want the story. Oh, by the way, chefs have the best stories. So it's sort of like, how's your love speaking to you? Like, what is it today that you are doing that you're doing really well, that you feel comfortable with, that is your talent, your God-given DNA talent? And how is love speaking to you today? And in that moment, that first year, because I've done it for several years since, in that first year, at the end of the 4 days of this event, there were people waiting in line, and I thought they were waiting in line to go to the book signing, but I realized they were waiting in line to speak with me. And I was like, wait, what? You know, I'm no longer at the Oprah show. Why do you want to talk to me? And that's when it sort of dawned on me like, oh, the talent I had at Oprah can translate to other stages and other audiences. So that's when I sort of started making my platform not just about me going and speaking my story to help others tell their story and inspire them to think about their own story. And then from there, I've started doing a lot of consulting. I wrote a book. I did my online curriculum. And so now what I really focus on, while I still do all of the things I just said, at the core, Love Speaks is about doing what you love, but it's also about helping people connect with themselves through their story so that they can speak on stages without fear. And all through the years of me being in front of thousands and thousands of people, we did the math, it was like 500,000 people, I was never scared. I was scared once when I was, we were at the Kodak Theater, which is now the Dolby Theater. It was the first time I had done like a theater. And my boss, Irma, was like, get out there, go. And I was like, oh. But I was never scared because I was so connected to my purpose, which was seating an audience, getting them in, talking to them, making friends with them. And then it just never dawned on me to be scared. And I realized there's so much in there that can help others, whether it's a toast at your loved one's celebration, a meeting with your boss, a keynote, or any kind of opportunity that you get to speak, whether it's, you know, locally at your community center or church or temple or a TED Talk. It could be any one of those things. So I get so much joy being able to now have another front row seat to people's stories. That's what I did at the Oprah show. Like I had a front row seat to the most powerful stories. Every day I was in that studio and, you know, those stories landed on my heart as well as millions of viewers' hearts, and they stuck with me. And now I'm able to really like talk to someone, and within a very short amount of time, I can get to the core of their story. That is what I'm very good at, connecting with people and helping them connect with themselves. One of my jobs, as I said, was the warm-up act. I did not need to connect that audience to Oprah. They walked in that way. I could have stood on the stage and they would have gone crazy. But what I did was I connected the audience with each other, with the person that they brought, with the person that they didn't know. These little things that I learned on a very, very big stage can be incorporated into anything when you're preparing to speak. And people, you know, it's one of the number one fears. It's just the one fear I don't have. It's like I'm scared of everything else. Planes, trains, boats, bridges, subways, elevators, self-park parking lots.
But not speaking.
And that is because I am 100% connected to who I am, and that brings me confidence. So all this time where we're wasting and like, oh, I'll take a public speaking course. No. You need to take a course that connects you to who you are so that you can go out there. So I don't buy that people are scared to like stand in front of an audience and speak. Of course, we're trained to think that. Of course, we're scared. Everyone's scared. I'm scared. But what I really think is that we are scared to stand in front of ourselves. And the minute that we actually decide to say, hey, I'm going to get deep and real with myself, find out what my strengths are, what my goals are, what my weaknesses are, where am I stuck, where am I thriving, what makes me feel at home, what do people depend on me for, what is my greatest gift to this world, what is my purpose, then there is no stage that can scare you. Like you're good. Like I can tell you 100 things I do poorly, and I can tell you, a handful of things I do well. And those handful of things that I do well, that's what gets me on the stage. So we have to really be good and kind to ourselves.
I'm going to touch on a few of those things we're going to go back to. But what I hear is when you're standing in kind of the fullness of who you are and your truth, that it's much easier to speak from that point. And the fact that it's called Love Speaks, never mind that your last name is Loveman, but it's that you're letting your love, that thing that was built into you in your DNA, that God-given thing that you mentioned, you're letting it out. And that's what we're here to do. So, I mean, there's so much alignment between what you do and what we're doing at Liberty that it's just it makes me so happy to hear you saying it. And I heard something else in your words, and I can't remember. He's a well-known professor from NYU, and it's just my brain fog that's not allowing me to remember him. But I heard him say, and I remember sharing it with my kids, he said, too many people are seeking passion and they should be seeking their talent. And I thought it was a really interesting distinction because he said passions lead us to hobbies and things like that. And then we have to figure out how to monetize them. Right. Talents are things that we can naturally be in the top 10, 5, 1% of in the world because it's who we are. And if we release that, and he said, if you release that, you will become passionate about that. And as you were talking about your work with Oprah, your work with others, that's what I heard.
Oh, it's interesting.
But let's go back a little bit because our audience doesn't have quite the context that I have. Tell us exactly, how long were you at Oprah? And was that the job that you said, I knew early on what I wanted to do?
Yeah, it was actually. The math is a little hard because I started at the show the year after she took the show national, which was 1986. She took the show national in 1986. I started in 1987. But let me just go back. When I was 14, my mom invited me to the filming of the Mike Douglas show, which was one of the first talk shows on TV. It happened to be filmed in my hometown of Philadelphia. She said, let's go. I was like, why? I don't know. I have no interest. I said yes. I could have said no. But as I sat there in that studio, I was like, this is what I want to do. And I saw that woman on the set and she had her clipboard and I was like, I don't know what she does, but that's what I want to do. And I immediately felt very much at home in that studio. Everything about it pleased all of my senses. And from that minute on, I was determined to work in television. And so, I did some internships. I went to school. I went to Washington. In Washington, I learned about an internship in Chicago. I'm from Philadelphia. I don't know where Chicago is. Geography, not a strong suit, nor is math. And so I ended up getting this job. It was at the PBS station in Chicago, and it was a national endowment that they had for 2 production interns a year through a philanthropist in Chicago, Irving Harris, God bless him. And I ended up getting it. And I'm like, oh, I'm moving to Chicago. Where is that? So I moved there for 1 year because that was it. That was just an internship for 1 year. There was no guarantee. And then that was the exact same year Oprah Winfrey moved to Chicago to take the place of the host for the local ABC show called AM Chicago. And God bless him, Phil Donahue was on at 9 a.m. in Chicago nationally. Oprah Winfrey took the 9 a.m. local spot and was doing ratings that were out of control. And then she got her show 2 years later after, in 86. And so what happened with me, paralleling here, I had met her because she used to come to our station to do like the local news show at PBS. And lovely, of course. And all of a sudden I'm like, okay, this show goes national. I end up applying. I interview with her. I'm wearing navy. It's my color. And she loves my suit. I still have it. And I ended up not getting the job. I kind of know why now because of who they hired, but it didn't work out. But a year later, it did. They called me and I started working. So I worked there in 1987 to about 91. Then I had kids. I freelanced a lot for 10 years. And then I went back in 2003 to 2014. So whatever that math is,
wow.
I never say that I was there forever, but it feels like I was. I was one of the first, 12 to 15 hires. I have all the old stories. In fact, I just recently saw a friend shared a picture because we didn't have cell phones, so we didn't have cameras on set, but an old picture of me in front of the Oprah audience. And I'm like, oh my, I'm 25 years old. So was it the job that I saw that day in the, Mike Douglas studio? Absolutely. I visualized it. I saw it. I knew it. I felt it, touched it, tasted it, heard it, smelled it, like all of it. And I was just lucky because I got a break that put me in the exact same city as a woman who would change the history of television and the world. Yeah. So it kind of blows my mind. In fact, I ran across a video of hers where she's speaking about just the power of using your voice, which is really what I do. And I sent it to my kids and I'm like, do you even believe this was my boss for so long? Like, It's such a blessing. Like I got to sit in those meetings and be like, this woman is my boss. Like, it's crazy. Yeah. Anyway, the show ended. My job became obsolete. She started her network. We were doing things for the network that required audience services. And then they put me in a marketing role, which was very kind of them. Again, not something I'm good at. I miss the studio. I miss the audience. I wanted to be with people. And so I started my own platform. At the time, I don't think I knew it would be a platform. It really was a business. And I was just going to go out and spread my love. And it has opened doors up for me in the most beautiful ways. I have met the most incredible, dynamic, interesting women.
Sure.
You say, hey, Liberty listeners, like they're my Love Speaks peeps. Like they all wear the badge. Like they all are doing what they love, using their talents and really being successful in life and working their asses off and supporting each other.
Yes.
When you work in TV, there's a lot of infighting and it's nuts. And that is the exact opposite of what I have experienced outside that world of television. I've only experienced, hey, how can I help you? How can I show up for you? I mean, it's just really like phenomenal, like what you've built and what you experience,
which is why. Kind. Thank you. Which is why, yes.
Which is why we have been put together.
Yes.
Thank you, Vicky Stauber.
Yes. Thank you to Vicky. Yes. As you're talking, I'm thinking all these listeners are like, well, yeah, Netta, but Sally Lou got to work with Oprah.
Yeah.
What I want us to hear is that you knew that was phenomenal. You knew that you had been sort of uniquely blessed, let's say. That's a really unique situation that you were in and continued to earn, right? Maybe you got lucky in the beginning, but staying there, going back after children, you earned that. What you're doing now is kind of paying forward all the riches that you got to soak in. Yeah, and all that you learned.
Thank you.
All that you learned both from Oprah, from the audience, from the guests, is what you're now being able to infuse in other people because you were in this like masterclass for all these years of how to tell stories, how to impact people, whether it's the way Oprah asked the questions, the way the audience responded, the way the guest was able to be vulnerable and open up. You had a front row seat to that. And now you're giving that back to us. And we're talking about these midlife evolutions. Yeah. And to me, you're a living example of that. How do I take where I came from, what I love, my talents, and how do I move that forward into this next season and stage of life in a way that's meaningful for me and gives back and is in service to others. And you are a living example of that. Let's talk a little bit about your book. You're so welcome. Thank you for doing the work you're doing. Your book entitled Speak, Love Your Story, Your Audience is Waiting. What's kind of the thesis of the book?
The book really, I wrote it for two reasons. One, as a credential. I was getting more opportunities to speak when I have a book that I can share with the audience and all of that. And second, it was really a healing thing for me. My original reason for writing the book was going to be about something totally different, which became one chapter, which was about my marriage. And so I realized that that wasn't the book that I should be writing. And for so many reasons, mostly personal. But I want to write a book that tells the story of all the lessons I've learned and will continue to learn, and invite the readers in to explore their own lessons as well. So after each chapter, there's a prompt for, a reader to kind of explore their own story, so that by the end of the story, the reader has a real feel for their own. And that's the whole point. Telling my story is not as fun for me as to listen to other people tell theirs. So for me, that's the invitation my book is. Hey, read mine, laugh, cry, nod your head, agree or disagree. But most importantly, let it inspire you to understand that your story can help someone else.
Yeah.
And the whole thing is, fall in love with your story. It's going to have really ugly parts to it. It's going to have really difficult, sad parts. It's also going to have beautiful parts like my story that is so like, oh, I want to work in TV. I saw a woman on the set with a clipboard. Oh, I work for Oprah. Oh, there are things that are also wrapped up in a nice little bow, but then there's a lot that isn't. And that's, of course, as we all know, where the most growth comes from.
Yeah.
And I believe that the reason why I said your audience is waiting is because so many of us don't think that our story is worth telling, or maybe embarrassed, or maybe shy, or wouldn't even know how to begin. And every time someone speaks their story, the world gets less divided. So that's what the Oprah Winfrey Show was. People told their stories and the viewers felt less alone. So when you are in front of someone who you have no idea what's going on in their life, or maybe you do, and you can share a part of your truth and yourself and your lessons with that person in hopes of helping them find their own truth and lessons and takeaway, then you're in service. And so that's really what my book I hoped for, was to be in service of others. Who am I to write a memoir? I'm just another person who's, living life. Everyone should write a memoir. Everyone should write their story. It is a gift to their children. It is a gift to their family. I am always chasing a story. I love a story. I love telling them. I love hearing them. I just wrote a children's book.
You did? Oh my gosh.
Yes.
Okay. I know that was on your bucket list.
Yes. Did I say that at Liberty Road? I think I did.
Yes. At the dinner.
And I did. And I've signed a contract. We're working on it. I'm working with a hybrid publisher. So I'm really, really excited. Like I cannot wait. I totally wrote this so I could go into like kindergarten classrooms and like read. Like, oh my God, like story time. I'm so excited.
That's amazing. Congratulations.
Thank you. Like we all have something. We all have, like going back to the NYU professor, we all have something that we can share with others that will help make their lives better. And guess what? That's talent, right? But we also have a story, and it costs nothing to tell it. Speak up, tell your story. It could be to one person, it could be to 2 million people, but tell your story.
It can be to yourself, an audience.
It could be.
One, when you talked about the gift it is to your children and to other people and the fact that it unites, I was thinking, gosh, articulating who we are, who we've been, our journey is in fact such a healing mechanism, right?
Oh, yeah.
And you even started out saying it was kind of for your own healing.
It was.
And I think that we start to have empathy for that person on the paper.
Of course.
We can be much harder on ourselves, but when we see the younger version of her, or the silly decisions she made, or the heartache that she went through, the times where she showed up and was so strong, all of a sudden we have a different sense of who we are and how we get to show up in the world. Which brings me to now the work that you do around the Love Speaks method. So now people are able to come to you and say, help me to articulate my story, help me to get in front of that audience, no matter the size. Not everybody's going to get up in front of 500,000 people like you.
Right.
How do you speak in front of people in a way that draws people in and doesn't come from I have the mic, I'm going to fill, the space with words? How do you do that? And what does the Love Speaks method offer people in that sort of training that you're giving them?
Yeah. So I took everything that I offered in my book and condensed it into modules, basically. And there's like 4 or 5 of them. And so the Love Speaks method includes worksheets as well as videos and prompts for you to do and takeaways. So the first and foremost thing is you have to connect with your most important audience, which is us, which is the one that we overlook all the time. So the worksheets are really about making that connection with yourself. And so what I love to do is help people find their strengths, their talents. So many of us get compliments on things and we're like, oh, no, that's no. And it's like, no, say yes, because accept a compliment, because that is your invitation really to understanding, oh, that's what I'm really good at. That's where I should be focused.
Yeah.
And so I spent a good portion of connecting people with, what makes them feel at home? What do you always get complimented on? What comes so naturally to you that you don't even realize you're good at it? And then we move from that self-exploration to writing. And then we write about our story and how would you start your story? I always like to ask people, like, how would you start your story? Like if you had to tell, a 2-minute story, how would it start? Like for me, it would be accept invitations from your mother, because if I hadn't, I would have never had the opportunity to see that a television career could be for me. I do a lot about stepping outside your comfort zone and doing the things that scare you. Again, we don't need to be terrified and put in danger, but doing things that scare us, like today, I did Tai Chi. I've been wanting to do it for over a year. It fell into my lap. I've been talking about it. Same thing happened with me with stand-up comedy. Just before the pandemic, had been talking about it for 10 years. It fell into my lap because Instagram was listening to me, obviously. And this thing came up on my feed. And I was like, oh, it's right here in Chicago. And I did it. And so always opening yourself up to doing things that kind of scare you, to do them not so that you believe that that's what your next career is going to be, but it really actually just reminds you to go back to do the things that you already do well better. Because if we can survive something that's scary to us, we can do anything. So I focus on that and stepping outside your comfort zone. If you have to speak, of course, be prepared. But more than anything, stay busy the day of or the evening of. Stay busy, because a busy mind does not allow all that crap to come in to say you're not where you have no business being there.
That's a great tip. Yeah.
But stay busy and schedule things that make you happy. Schedule a meeting will go well. Schedule a phone call with someone who will make you laugh. So for me, I was so busy working, getting the people into their seats and listening to all the things on my headset that were happening and problem solving from production, that I never had time to get nervous. The other thing, second tip, which is really the most phenomenal thing that a speaker can do, no matter where they're speaking, is to get to know their audience before they take that stage. So mingling with your audience before you take that stage is essential to, 1, warming yourself up. 2, you're now building relationships and connections with people. So any kind of information that you might learn while you're mingling about, obviously whatever it is you're there to speak about, you can use in your talk. And so then all of a sudden the audience realizes, wow, the speaker really listens. And now what I said meant something to them. And now they're sharing that. And then when the speaker uses and says, Netta, when you said that, it really made me think about what the purpose is for me being here. And here it is. And now Netta from the audience is like, oh, well, that's so nice. And now the audience is now like, I want to know Netta. And like, it's that ripple effect. By the time I took that stage, they were my friends. Like they were rooting for me. Audiences are always rooting for speakers. Like nobody wants to see people fail. But if you spend the time to arrive early, ask whoever's hired you or asked you to speak, if you could have some time to speak with the attendees or the audience prior to, and you get like one or two like really interesting things that people say, and you ask, is that okay if I share that? It shows that you have paid attention. It shows that you're listening, shows that you care. It shows that you're human. All of that is great because the audience is going to want to take you home, and that's a speaker's job. But what it really also does is it takes your mind off of your immediate assumption that you're going to fail.
Those are such good tips. And I also love this idea of when you're mingling with the audience, you're on this level playing field. So they're like, oh, she's one of us. And they automatically want to root for you versus when you come out, you haven't connected with them. You've been behind a curtain.
Yeah.
You show up and then you leave. You're like, who is she?
Yes. Yes. And by the way, if anyone doesn't have an opportunity to speak with an audience before, like it just isn't going to work, go to the ladies' room. I cannot tell you how many wonderful ladies' room moments I have had. Once I am in full Spanx, dress is off, and I'm putting my dress armpits into the hand blowers because I have sweat through my dress. And that was back when I used to wear red a lot, and I was wearing like a red cute cotton dress, and I'm like, oh, never wear cotton.
Yeah.
But people sweat. We're human.
Yeah.
It happens. And that audience, that was one of my best days because people were just like in love with the fact that I was just blow drying my pits.
So real. So real. Yeah. So from blow drying our pits all the way towards really knowing our talents, you've given us so many, I think, really practical tips. Yes. But I think ways of thinking about sort of shifting our mind around public speaking and how we approach that.
It is not about you standing on a stage and seeing people in their underwear. That's not it. Like that is not going to help you. It is about you standing on a stage of your own life, looking in the mirror and saying, let me get to know you.
Yeah.
It's really self-love. It's really like self-hate if you say, oh, I'm scared to speak. Why? Why are you scared? What are you scared of? What is it about you that you don't think is worthy of being in front of people? My husband, he and I are exact opposites. We get along very, very well. But like he's scared of nothing except for public speaking. And when his mom passed 2 years ago, we had a service. When I got there, he'd already prepped his eulogy. We'd already helped write it together. I didn't think to be a speaker coach to him. And I'm really upset that I didn't because his font was huge. I told him to not staple his pages.
Yeah.
I like sliding if you have to use a script. And he got lost. He didn't have his pages numbered and he got lost and he could not recover. And I'm in the front row saying the word pumpernickel because I knew the next story was about his Jewish mother knowing that he liked pumpernickel bread at one point in his life. So she bought it every single time he came home.
Yeah.
And I'm like, pumpernickel.
Yeah, that's the story. Tell that story.
He couldn't do it. So he had two choices. One, throw his script up in the air and just speak from his heart, which would be my choice. But he was so terrified in that moment that he had gone blank and didn't know where to go that he really, he took some time to like organize and find, which is also fine. But that's what I want to teach people to do. And he really inspired me. So I incorporated it into my curriculum. I don't want people to feel like if they lost their script that they're done. You are her son. You know what to say. You might not say it exactly the way you wrote it. That's even better sometimes. So the Love Speaks method helps people trust themselves and their heart and hook onto that piece that's inside of all of us that will allow us to really have the confidence to speak in front of others and not fear that you will fail. And if you do, we're all human.
As you're saying that, I too actually enjoy public speaking. So
You're very good at it.
I'm with you in that it's not a fear, but I realize that for people that I know have that fear, I think it's more around perfectionism than it is around public speaking. And in the case of your husband's story, it may not have been his own tendency to lean towards perfectionism. It was more, I want to get this right for my mom.
Totally.
Right? And that puts
Bingo.
all this pressure on why we shouldn't, shoot from the hip and just tell the stories that we know, because we want to say the right words and honor that person in the right way. And sometimes, not in your husband's case, but sometimes people are just self-important and they're making more of themselves than they really need to. And so they're trying to hang on to that sort of weird facade that they've created around themselves. And so they kind of stumble through that.
Yeah, well, that's immediate not being authentic. I do want to say that after that happened, it was like a week later, and he said to me, he had a therapy appointment. And I said, you should talk to your therapist about the eulogy moment. And he's like, yeah, I probably should. And he's really hanging on to a lot of guilt and grief and shame even, which are all normal feelings. But you were right. He wanted to get it right for his mom. And I said, don't talk to him about that you wished you'd done better. Talk to him about, process all your feelings, obviously, but talk to him about where that connection is that is lost, between you and yourself. I look at things very differently. Like, I'm not like, no, go take a public speaking course. No, go spend some time connecting with yourself and getting to know who you are. So, anyway.
Well, in the words of your own boss, that must have been a real aha moment, right?
Yeah.
For him to hear you say that and say, oh, yeah, that's more about a connection to myself than anything else.
Yeah.
There's so many times that, I've had to try and figure it out as I tell Liberty Road story, as I articulate what we're doing, as I hear other people articulate the mission behind their business or just their own personal story. And people really get flustered with how to tell their story in an effective and efficient way. We've got Sally Lou Loveman on the show, so I feel like we need to ask, what are a few, we'll call them tips, you've given us so many already, but that can help us to really distill our stories, because we can get lost in side stories, adjacent stories, all these tangents, too many details that don't really convey much.
Right.
What are some tools that you can give us to really get that, an elevator pitch for our lives, not necessarily our businesses, but for our lives? For our lives.
Well, I always tell people you can't tell the whole story. No one can. We don't have the time. We don't have the energy.
Yeah.
So you, like the word you just used, distill, we do have to distill it down. We have many chapters. Each decade brings us new challenges and new stories. And that's what's phenomenal about our lives and being human. We get to wake up every day and decide, this is not the way I want my story to go. I want it to go this way. But I would say that the first thing is to start writing. Just start writing little stories down, little vignettes, as if you are journaling. I like to chunk things out. The first part is welcoming everybody and telling people who you are. The second part is, oh my God, here's my origin story, the Mike Douglas show, and here's how I put it to work. That's number 3. I worked for Oprah. Number 4 is audience engagement. What are you doing with your story? La, 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 la. So if you look at it as sections as opposed to a 10-page script, that will overwhelm you. So write little stories. And then when you are writing, don't ever write for other people. Write for yourself. Say it in your voice. Then when you are really ready to speak it, always rehearse it out loud so that in that time of rehearsal, you add things that you could not have written. It has to come from your own voice. And then you say something, you're like, oh, that's cute. That's a good moment. Okay, I'll put that in.
Or the opposite, right? Hearing yourself say something and it falls flat. Like, oh, that doesn't really translate. Yeah.
Usually for me, it's the writing is like, I could say that better. And I say it and I'm like, oh, that's much better. So that's why I always say, speak it. I love to get people off script and speak from their heart, but use that script is there.
It's almost like a template.
In case you need it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's sort of what I do, that chunking, like I map it out and it's like, you just see those 6 segments and then you know where you're going. It's truly a roadmap, but you can't tell the whole story. Tell a piece of the story that resonates the most with you because it will resonate the most with others. And in that story, what is the lesson that you have learned? What is the new idea that you can share about life, about success, about conquering your fear, whatever it is, that you can kind of offer a new idea to people to think about it differently and incorporate it into their own life. And of course, I always like a callback. Callbacks are always the greatest thing in writing,
Well, you just, for those who don't know, it's a comedic tool too, or mechanism. What is a callback?
So a callback is when you say something at some point and you go back to it and everyone knows, oh, that's set. It's like a setup, And it does tie things together, and it is used in comedy, but it also is used in storytelling, and it's a beautiful thing. One of my favorite things to do to help people, you're human. When you are telling your story, don't forget that you are human first.
Yeah.
Like when something happens in the room, let the live content take over. Let it happen. And so like for me, like I'm going to compliment my audience as much as I can because it just makes them more connected to themselves, each other, and me.
So we've just started this questions from our insiders, which is our Liberty Road community, and they get to ask a question of our guest expert.
Bring it on.
So this is from Aviva Black of Oakland, California, and her question is, let's say we've hooked the audience through our personal story. Then what is the number one tip to maintain that engagement?
Oh, wow. That's exactly what we're talking about, really.
Yeah, it really is.
So thanks, Aviva. You hook your audience by coming out and being who you are, being yourself.
Yeah.
And you hook your audience by being vulnerable and telling a personal piece of the story that makes sense to what you're speaking about. So you add a little bit of vulnerability there, so that you remind people that you are just like them, you're human. And then you ask them a question to think about something. And that way, now we're all included. We're all on the same playing field. And maybe even someone nods or has a reaction and you're speaking and you're like, tell me what you're thinking. This is just being conversational. But the way you then really pull them and keep them in is that you don't stop. Like you understand that your audience is just as important as you, if not more. Like I always say, the better the audience, the better the speaker. I know that you have, as a speaker, you have a time frame. So you have to allow for time to relate to your audience. But once it happens, because that's what all speakers should do, that's their job, is to bring the audience in, don't stop.
Yeah.
Don't do it to the point where you're not getting your point made, but include the audience from the beginning until the end. It's a way to make everyone in the room feel important. And you can't talk to every single audience member, but even if you speak to one, it's the most inclusive thing you can do. And it helps you as a speaker and it helps the room. And if you're lucky enough to pull them in, don't let go.
It's almost like it's choreographed, but only lightly. Instead of these very specific, steps, you're telling us to listen to the music, listen to the beat, whether that's our own story or the audience. Yeah. And also what you're describing is a two-way dialogue. So after you tell your story and you've made yourself vulnerable so the audience knows who you are and you've captivated them, then you're asking them who they are by, you don't have to get a response.
Right.
It's this lovely dance that you've sort of revealed to us or shared with us. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
So my last question, I can't believe our time is
Thanks,
up.
Aviva.
Thanks, Aviva. How has Love Speaks as a platform, all the things that you've done around it, how has that liberated you?
Ooh, I love your liberty theme. How has it liberated me? Well, I'm sitting in my house in Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania, where I get to be because I don't have to be on a set somewhere and have to be on a schedule and a production schedule. I miss that, but it has allowed me in this decade of my life, and even just in my 50s, to be in charge and get to get to do what I want to do and get to be in charge of the people I want to speak to and the people I want to work with. And it's hard. I miss the grandiose part of my old life. And now I am in charge of my life. And it is really beautiful and wonderful. I can turn it up. I can turn it down. And I did say to Oprah when I left, I said, you ruined it for me. Thanks.
Yeah. Thanks for nothing. Yeah.
How could I ever work for anyone else? I can't. I really can't. I can't. Yeah. So I'm going to work for myself. Not easy, very much of a team person, but I managed to fill in the gaps on being that solopreneur by connecting with these amazing women that I've met throughout my time of starting this work. And it has liberated me in knowing that I can dream about what I want and I can do it. And here's the bottom line. No one can tell you no when it's your content. No one can tell you no when it's yours. So for all of you who have dreams that you want to write this or speak that or draw that or begin a foundation or whatever it is, no one can tell you no if it's yours. And so therefore, be the boss of your idea. It might not take off the way you think it will, but it is yours. And no matter how it goes, it's yours and no one else can say no to it. I mean, people can not hire you, but you really are in charge. And I think that to me is how it's liberated me. I'm in charge.
That's awesome. Thank you, Sally Lou Loveman, for bringing so much love to this episode and sharing all the things that you have learned on your journey with Oprah and the journey that you've created for yourself since. I think we're all a little bit better equipped to go out and share our stories because of this time with you. Thank you.
I hope so. It's really, truly the best gift you could give someone is your story. The best gift you could also give someone is to ask them to tell you theirs.
Gosh. Okay. Drop the mic there. And thank you, Liberty listeners, for spending this time with Sally Lou and with me. And we will have everything she mentioned in the show notes, and we'll see you guys next week. Bye for now. Liberty Road is broadcast on all platforms: Apple Podcast, Spotify, Stitcher, Google Podcast, and more. If you like what you've heard, please follow, rate, and review Liberty Road on Apple Podcast and Spotify. It helps us to know if these episodes are inspiring and equipping you to move into your middle third with intention. Liberty Road is created by executive producer Netta Jones, supervising producer Elizabeth Wyndham, producer Julia Wyndham, and music by Jack Jones.
The new Boost Mobile network is offering unlimited talk, text, and data for just $25 a month for life.
That sounds like a threat.
Then how do you think we should say it?
Unlimited talk, text, and data for just $25 a month for the rest of your life?
I don't know.
Until your ultimate demise.
What if we just say forever?
Okay.
$25 a month, forever.
Get unlimited talk, text, and data for just $25 a month with Boost Mobile forever.
After 30 gigabytes, customers may experience slower speeds. Customers will pay $25 a month as long as they remain active on the Boost Unlimited plan.
This podcast is brought to you by eHarmony, the dating app to find someone you can be yourself with. Why doesn't eHarmony allow copy and paste in first messages? Because you are unique, and your conversations should reflect that. eHarmony wants you to find someone who will get you. How are you going to know who gets you? If people send you the same generic conversation starters they message everyone else. Conversations that actually help you get to know each other. Imagine that. Get who gets you on eHarmony. Sign up today.
Taking care of kids, senior loved ones, and yourself can already be stressful, and adding new fall routines into the mix can make it feel impossible. Remember, it's okay to ask for help. There's a reason why 29 million families have turned to Care.com. Care.com helps you find background-checked sitters, nannies, and senior caregivers who can help with everything from watching kids after school to senior meal prep. Find care that fits your budget and schedule with Care.com and get the help you need.